My name is Craig Lawrence Rice. My relationship to Paisley Park, the studio specifically, I was the executive at the building. I managed Paisley Park Enterprises and the studio while I was there. I was there before, actually, from Purple Rain, the movie, on. So I was around with the initial building of the building and development of it. I didn't do that. That was actually Red White. There was him and Harry Grossman really were the ones that built the place. I just came in after, once it was built, and took over the management of the building, and then building the company that ultimately had the recording publishing company inside of it, the equipment, the film company, those entities that were sort of built out of Paisley Park, the facility. I mean, I'm kind of one of the unique ones in the Twin Cities. I was born in St. Paul and lived in St. Paul and Minneapolis equally. Went to high school in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and even as I got into college and stuff like that, I still kind of went back and forth. So I know both of the cities really well. So I'm sort of I think that Minnesota, specifically, as speaking of the Twin Cities, are very, very it's a unique place. It's a creative center in the country. Obviously, there's the music part is there, but also writing and theater and the other art forms are there, and that's what I really think is incredible about Twin Cities. I think that what I did specifically was, first I got into music very young and started playing a lot, and that was what I did. The interesting part of it was that I really wanted to make movies when I first started. Music was, so I didn't know how to do that because there was, at the time I didn't know anybody who was doing that in town, so music kind of came an afterthought, because everybody in my family, I have a lot of brothers and sisters. Everybody sort of played some type of an instrument, and I got into drums, and then I got into the bass, and that's what I did, and that was my background. I think what makes Minneapolis culture and sound really unique is because it's kind of a blend of music styles. When I grew up, in a lot of the initial musical artists of certain generations, the 60s and 70s, we didn't have I should put it this way, we sort of had a lot of music here, a lot of live performances here, because this was the closest place to Chicago. So when people would play in Chicago, national acts, big acts, and then they would come here and play, would be their next stop, and then there was no place else other than Vegas or LA. So they would always come here. So you got a chance to see really everybody, white and black acts. So there's a lot of live performances that were performed here. I think the other thing specifically for sort of this town, there was a lot of really strong white talent that was here and came from here and grew up here. So there was always a music industry here. I think different than a lot of cities. Going all the way back to Judy Garland and Eddie Albert. And so there was a business of music that was sort of embedded in our brain. And then we had a lot of black acts here that were really here, that were professionals, so you always heard that. I think for black artists, I think what changed us was that there was no real black radio station here. So you were sort of indoctrinated into white music. All of us that specifically of a certain age know polka, because there was a show on called Polka Jamboree every Saturday along with Bandstand. So you got this incredible mix of music, rock and roll, other types of music so you were sort of indoctrinated into music as a broader base than just R&B or soul or whatever. I think that's what it was. Yeah, but you can imagine what was growing up without any black radio. So people from your cousins or family from out of town would bring records in, or they would tell you about artists. But you basically knew most of the white acts. You knew because that's where the radio was dominant the radio, and the fact that country western polka was also always around you, so you got a chance to hear all this different kinds of music, and you sort of blended it together, and that's it created a certain sort of synergy inside your brain that other people, specifically African Americans, didn't have. And then you were around white people a lot, so you always knew white people, and you felt comfortable playing with them, even though there was issues here in town about mixed bands, which was not always, was sort of kind of frowned upon, and would sometimes eliminate you from playing certain clubs if you didn't mix the bands. So you dealt with that in a whole different level than you would if you grew up in a real predominantly, say, African American environment, like Baltimore or Atlanta or Memphis or something like that. I think my parents were really into arts, and from any kind of arts, the painting and drawing. My mother was a really good drawer is not the right word, but you know what I'm saying. They introduced us to the symphony, so we went to the symphony as children, but they also took us to films, and my parents, for whatever reason, weren't into children's film, so they took us to adult films. So like Stalag 17, which was the film that I had seen when I was 5, and it's a prisoner of war film, World War II, and I think it was just the impact emotionally tapped into something in me as a kid, that there was people on screen that were feeling something. And I think for me, not just music, not just film, but all art is really about emotion. It's about feeling, and I think that's what tapped into me. And so when I was that age, I clearly remember asking my mom, "Who does this on the screen?" Because I didn't, it's like somebody has to do this. I was clear that it's like, how does this happen? He said, "Well, this is a filmmaker, that's a director that directs this," and that's why I said, "That's what I want to do. I want to create these kinds of images and emotion and stuff like that." So yeah, it was weird. But again, growing up here and also being Black, there was like, oh, what is that about? So I sort of got into theater, when I was young, before high school, just doing that. And then music was another way of expressing emotion. It really wasn't until I had been playing professionally that I realized that I didn't know how you did it. I mean, I read some books, and I had a Super 8 camera and ran around, just shot stuff, but there was no structure to my work. And somebody told me that, if you really want to do this, you should probably go to school to do this. And I didn't even know you could go to school. I literally applied to college that week and said, I'm going to do this. So yeah, that's how it happened. I don't know if it was a time. I mean, personally, I know the moments that it started happening. It was relatively quickly. I like playing. I'm not a sort of a creative musician. I'm not somebody like Prince who can actually write songs. I'm not that type of musician. I can hear something and I can play it. But I realized that playing other people's music and playing for other people. So I was a bass player, so I was always sort of backing people up, wasn't fulfilling enough for me, and I started getting into drugs. I'm not going to lie about that. It was like, because I just realized that something's happening inside me. I'm feeling like I'm sort of in a dead end, and I just needed to do something else. I really felt that if I kept going in this music business the way I was doing it, I wasn't going to survive. And it really was, what else do I want to do? A friend of mine said, what else do you want to do? And I said, I don't know. This is what I've been doing for, a number of years, since I was 14, just playing. And then I said, the only other thing I want to do was to make music or make movies. And she said, well, why don't you go to school for that? And I said, what? You can go to school to learn how to do this? And that's really what it was. I mean, it's just talking to people and expressing yourself was what I did. And that really kind of stimulated that I'm going to do this. There's a pathway. I just needed to see the path. I didn't see the path. And then at the same time as when I saw Shaft, and I figured Gordon Parks did it, and so it was all kind of a period of time where it just kind of shifted my mind to getting into art as a form of expression for humanity. Was really what I wanted to do. Unfortunately, not as much now as it was when I started here in the 70s, and was kind of when I started going to school, is that there's definitely a stereotype about being Black, and I mean a real distinct stereotype, and it's more about incompetency, and I never wanted to feel that they were hiring me because I was Black, and I didn't want them to feel like they were hiring what they felt was second best, which was a lot of what it was. Not so much here in town, but more when I went to LA. I had overheard some filmmakers at one of the studios when I was at film school, and I just used to, when I was in film school, I used to just go to the lots, the studio lots, Warner Brothers, and I overheard some white executives talking about, if you want to see something really funny, watch Black people try to make a movie. It really stuck with me, because I realized, even though they may not say that externally, it's what they feel internally. And I was never going to allow that to be a thing. I wanted to be, on that level or better, so that they could never have that and have any kind of meaning, it's like, I think they felt that Black people were not filmmakers, but film hustlers. And I can't say that they were totally wrong about it to a certain extent at the time, but it definitely was something that we need to be premier in this business. And I think that part of filmmaking that a lot of people don't understand is that filmmaking is really about hustling. It's like really, it's also about creativity and passion. And I think Black people our whole history is based on that. That's what we do in America. And so I think that we are really designed to do this. We just have to be honest with ourselves and confident in that ability to do that, which means training and education and consistent, not always wanting to be the star, but sometimes wanting to learn from the people who do it. So I would do whatever I could to learn whatever I could from whoever it was, so I could understand it and consume that information. I think the challenges of managing Paisley Park I think the challenge first for me was for Prince and I to decide what Paisley Park was. And what we talked about was that it was sort of what we came up with it was a creative bomber. The building was going to be filled with creative people. When I worked there, there was probably, when I got into, it was almost 100 people working in the building in different capacities, and they all didn't work for him. We had a children's music company that made children's records. We had people who managed the studio. We even had a daytime schedule where we had gospel people come in, record in the daytime because they would get up in the morning. We had 2 dance areas there for people to rehearse. I had producers in the building. We had a design section, people who were designers who were in the building. So I wanted it to feel like this is creative. I mean, this whole idea that not necessarily Disney's philosophy, but Disney-esque kind of an approach where we're a studio and this is what we're going to create. So he and I, once he sort of, I got on the same page, it was easier for me to manage Paisley, because even for him, it was like he had to book studio time. I was part of my deal. You have to book studio time. Now I'll tell you when your studio time is running out, but you got to tell me, because if you don't book it, I'm going to book it with somebody else. So I said, you have to come to that. And he said, okay. So I said, this gives us the opportunity to really do this and make every square foot of the building make money, first of all, but also to bring in people from all over, from different countries, from different cultures and different musical styles to actually work in Paisley. And so that the challenge then was once we came up with that idea, was to bring in people like that, and like Jeff Beck and his band played there, and and Sesame Street Live rehearsed there, and so we had, George Benson, we had all these different people, coming in that were not necessarily part of Prince's camp or even Prince's influences, but they were there. REM and people like that would come, and so we had them in the building. Barry Manilow, who I thought was incredible. He's one of the I had no impressions of him before I got there, or until he came, I should say. And when he was there, it's like he was such a professional, such a nice person. It was like, so Hammer was there. I mean, so it was this incredible building where you just got information and creativity from all different kinds of people. I think I never approached it as Prince and I talked about this because of being Black, but I said, we can't approach this thing as a Black building. I don't want this to feel like, you have to be Black to be here. You have to, we're running it. This is us. This is our creative center, and this is what we're going to drop all these creative bombs all over the world. That was what we joked about, you know. First of all, it was the conversation, the tradition that we started, because it could easily have been just Prince's own private studio, and and people would have said, "Oh wow, that's where Prince works," as opposed to, you know, if you look at the work that was made in Paisley, and that became its legacy. I mean, you know, the REM records and the Bear in the Big Blue House or Sesame Street Live or Jeff Beck or all the groups that actually recorded there and put these records out, and him not necessarily him physically being involved, but he sort of radiated the creativity. And I think that's kind of what all artists do, you know, is they radiate this creativity, and people would not always see Prince or meet him while they were here, but they knew that this was his concept, and we just kind of promoted that concept. And as we built a company, a lot of people know we had a Paisley Park, not a studio, but a part of our company was in Japan. And so we had Paisley Park Japan, and it was really about getting Japanese artists to come to Paisley, and even to a certain extent we sent engineers over there to record the artists in Japan, because Paisley Park has this sort of this creative thought process, and we hired the engineers and producers to do that. And so that we could spread that, you know, that was the goal, was to spread this concept of art and creativity and this visionary process to the world. That was really what we did. And so I think that it's not mythology. That was our doctrine that we spread out. And I think that's why Paisley Park was what it was. I mean, probably 5 years before, well, yeah, probably 5 years before he passed, he called me, and I went back out to Paisley, because we had always stayed in touch. We were never had any animosity at all. He called me, I came back out there, and he said, "Can you bring Paisley Park to the way it was when you were here?" And I said, "Yeah, he asked, "How did you do that? What did you do?" And I said, "Well, we talked about this. You have to open it up. You have to get back into Paisley Park. This is like revitalize the ship, and we'll call people in and tell them that we're open for business." And that's what he was really interested in doing, that because I think because he was staying there or living there, and it was just him, and that didn't have the vibrancy that he had remembered of all the people and the different aspects and producers and writers and designers and stuff running around through the building. He wanted to do that. He just never got around to it. I told him I would do it. You know, you just got to let me first. The first thing you got to do is you can't live here. So that was my thing. Is like, because I could hear him right now calling, saying it's too noisy here. You know, but that was, he really was interested in bringing back that Paisley as this thing. You know, so. I think, wow, it's probably not one single project. One thing that us coming up with the concept for Graffiti Bridge and bringing the time back together, you know, for it was hard, and but was really good to see them again, everybody talking and everybody hanging out again after so many years of separation and certain a level of animosity. It was really great to see and feel them there. I like the feeling of that. I think the thing that I personally was the moments that Prince and I could talk about the future of creativity, the future of music, the future of film in our meetings. I think a lot of people think that Prince was pretty isolationist about creativity, but he really wasn't. He read the newspaper, he watched a bunch of films and TV shows, and he had a vision for the future. Those moments I really cherish, because I think they ultimately shaped me. Well, first of all, Prince was the one that gave me an opportunity to direct. I was producing, I had not directed, and even though that's what I went to school for, I just never got the opportunity. he was the one that said, you need to start directing. And so he, I did Maserati, then I did Patti LaBelle and stuff. So yeah, it was really him. He saw it in me. I never once told him that I wanted to. He just saw it because I think because of the way we talked. And those conversations, I will always miss them, but I cherish them, Again, another Prince. I would have never even. Prince had this idea, and he talked to me and Jack Robinson about this. He wanted to start a school, and Jack Robinson, who had been a sound person who actually started IPR, he talked to both of us like, we should start a school. And how do you do that? I don't know, so he just thought you just could do it. Well, you just can't just do it. So Jack went to what was called Music Tech at the time, and he said, you come here, we'll learn how to do this, and then we can start the school. So that's what we did. That's actually how I started to becoming, and I obviously became a professor, and then I'm still doing that. I think that the idea that he had about education, for which would have been the Prince University if we'd have ever done it, was the fact that he wanted to educate young people in the realistic world of art and music and film, that they could actually do. So it's more of a hands-on kind of approach as opposed to sort of an esoteric kind of an approach to college, which is kind of what he felt colleges were, which is not totally true, but there are elements of it. But really, how do you really do this? And that was kind of his goal. And so I think I took that philosophy into McNally Smith College of Music when I taught there, and then I also use that at the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, which I teach right now. It's really me providing, I should say, education that's basically applied learning. As that's what I do. Oh, well, what advice would I give to Black entertainers that want to get into the entertainment industry? First of all, I think for Black people specifically, and it's not diluting from white people, Black people have to understand that it's a process. You're not always going to be the star, and it's okay. You're not always going to be in the forefront. That's okay. It's a collaborative process. So you're going to look for the best people that you can work with. I think the other thing that I would tell anybody is that your perseverance and dedication, you have to be almost approaching this business like a calling, but it's a business of being called. It's not just, I want to be creative, I want fame, it's a business of being called, and you have to approach it that way.